Greetings and welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Poly Weekly News. I'm your host, David Danto, and while we're all preparing for our wonderful holiday break and being with family and celebrating whatever it is that you celebrate, many of us in the industry are getting ready for our annual schlep, and I call it that, out to CES in Las Vegas. So we're going to talk a little bit about CES in the show, the history, what we're doing this time. First, way before I got this haircut, a couple of days ago, I had a conversation with my colleague Shannon Shamoon. Let's play that. Let's talk about what HP and Poly are doing at CES. So we'll do that first, and then Greg Harper will be my guest. So here's Shannon. So joining me now is my friend and colleague Shannon Shamoon. Shannon, did I pronounce your name right?
Yes, of course. You got it.
Okay, terrific. And we've chatted a bunch of times before, but for anybody who doesn't remember, tell everybody who you are and what you do at Poly HP.
So I'm Shannon Shamoon. I lead our global PR program over at Poly, which is now part of Poly HP Hybrid Work Solutions. And I've been with the company for about 4.5 years and, help announce all these great products we're bringing to market.
Now we're catching Shannon a little bit off guard. She's sitting in a hotel room in a city not to be disclosed. And she's doing, this is the exciting part. She's giving embargo. I don't know if you know the term embargo. Embargo means we can't tell anybody in the public. We're just telling some press and analysts. She's giving embargoed updates on what we're going to be announcing at CES. Yes, Poly and HP are planning on being at CES, and we've got some interesting things to tell people. So obviously we can't tell anybody what that stuff is, Shannon, but it's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I'm so excited to be having an announcement go out at CES. Now that we're part of HP, we're looking forward to connecting with all our press and analyst friendlies and giving them the news under embargo. And, if you're coming to the show, we will also be participating at the PepCom event, which, if you're familiar, is a pretty large media event that takes place. And it sounds like this year it's at Caesar's Palace. So we're very much looking forward to seeing everyone who's planning to attend that event as well.
Okay, that's terrific. So we're going to have a big presence there. I'm going to be at CES. I'm not going to be with the HP team. I'm going to be attending it as part of an industry analyst and influencer. So I'm cool with that. But it's always a very important event for me. Not so much because I'm seeing devices or systems, but because I get a look at what's going on 18 to 20 months ahead in technology. And I kind of get a sense of the direction of where things are going. Really one of the most important conferences that I go to every year. And I can't be more excited. Plantronics, when it was a consumer brand, had a big presence at CES, but since then we really haven't done very much there, and now we're back. So it's got to be cool for you to be making those plans and setting up appointments and talking to people and really getting ready to tell everybody, look, the world, take a look at what HP and Poly can do together.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And we have a lot of new, exciting hybrid work solutions that are just around the corner, right? So we'll get through the holidays and then you will be seeing some exciting news from Poly and HP.
And it's just the first conference that we're going to be giving news at in calendar year 23. Very quickly after that, we have ISE. Very quickly after that, we have Enterprise Connect. There are a lot of other conferences in the calendar, but it's really nice to be there at this first one and this biggest one. And you got all your reservations made?
Yeah, actually. So that's nice.
That is nice, because Vegas is a crazy place to be at during CES. Last year, there were a lot of we were in a COVID spike. So there were only about 40,000 people at CES, and 40,000 people is actually a pretty big show. It's small for CES, but it's a pretty large show. This year they've announced they're expecting to be back to about 100,000 people.
That's really exciting. Yeah, I feel like it'll be good for everyone to be back there. I'm excited to see how the show shapes out this year and, what other exciting technology trends show up.
Do you have any advice for people that attend the show in terms of, other than just looking at your announcements and what we're doing here at the company, but any hints from past attendees?
Yeah, I guess the hot tip I would say is, always carry water on you and bring comfy shoes.
Those are two of the big ones. Also, try and plan your days so that you're in one place and on one day and maybe one place in the evening. Don't plan your day where you have to go from venue to venue during the day.
True.
Then you spend most of your day in taxis and buses.
Yeah, if you're hitting the show floor, it's huge. So, you can hit one wing one day and another wing the next. That might make sense too.
And we're also, this year, they're using the new West Hall in addition to the older halls. So it's a schlep to get from there back and forth. It's interesting if you haven't been there. It's terrific. But bottom line is, come see what HP and Poly are saying there. Reach out to Shannon. Shannon, how can somebody get a hold of you?
Yeah, if you want to reach me, you can reach me at shannon.shamoon@hp.com, or you can also find me on LinkedIn.
Terrific. And for those of you that aren't coming, look for the press releases early in January for some of the new announcements that HP and Poly are going to be making. I'll certainly bring them to you on the show when you watch it. Shannon, thanks very much. Have a great trip there and enjoy
Thanks so
yourself.
much, David. Look forward to seeing you then.
So isn't it awesome that after all these years, Poly and HP are back at CES and we're actually going to have some announcements? And I'm sure that I'm going to be able to tell you guys what those announcements are after they happen. So stay tuned. We'll report what all of they are. But it's really going to be an exciting time to be there. I'm joined now by my longtime industry friend and colleague, Greg Harper. Greg, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell everybody who you are and what you do in the industry.
Sure. As you say, longtime colleague, but I'm an industry analyst, I guess, in the best way. And I've been looking at the industry for decades. I remember going back to CES when it was still in the summer in Chicago. But I do this looking at edge devices, looking at new technology, I look at directions, et cetera. And I basically present to a number of organizations privately and publicly and sort of look at where the future is. So I guess I'm a futurist, an analyst looking where things are going and enjoying every minute of it.
And I suppose the last 3 or 4 years, as difficult as they've been for everybody, or 2 or 3 years, for us, for futurists, really was sort of like putting gasoline on the fire. The acceleration has just been off the charts.
I was absolutely bogged down with projects and opportunities, et cetera. We moved up to we have a house upstate New York, and I managed to get fiber installed there. And I was doing presentations to China, India, all over the United States on a regular basis. I mean, it was kind of weird. I mean, the forests of the Adirondacks, talking about new technology, attending CES virtually, actually, for the first couple of years there. But it really, I did a lot of work in distance learning, did a lot of work in new technologies that would be collaboration, things that we'd been doing for years, but not at the scale. And sort of everybody sort of discovered, oh my word, there's collaboration. So yes, indeed, the past couple of years have been extraordinarily busy.
Yeah, and I've always talked about. I attend a lot of conferences, as you do as well. We tend to bump into each other in the corridors at many conferences around the world
in line going into the press conferences. Yes.
But I attend this, and CES has quickly become my most important conference for me. Not my most important in the industry. I certainly see other industry colleagues and present and do other things on topic at other ones, but this is the place where I go, not so much to see the individual pieces, although they're important and they're good and sometimes they're fun and sometimes they're not. But you sort of can step back and get this big picture of where technology is going for the next 12 to 18 months that you can't get anywhere else. Conversation I've had with Steve Koenig a number of times, who's the CTA's research head, that you don't really get that opportunity anywhere else. You have to filter a lot of the noise in order to get it, but you do wind up getting some really good perspective as to what's going on, and I don't think we can get that from anywhere else.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I say the exact same thing. And I've done things with Gary Shapiro, for example. We've done conferences together around the world at different locations, and in fact, it really is. It talks to you about the direction. It used to be the military was sort of giving the direction for technology. That sort of disappeared after a number of years, and the CES from I guess the late mid '90s going up into the 2000s really became the place where you get the trends, you get the direction, and it's evolved. I mean, like this year's CES, and we're going to see a lot more automotive than we have in the past. We'll probably see less gadgets. Of course, there's probably a lot less people coming in from Asia because of all the pandemic travel issues. But the innovation is going to be rampant. Eureka Park, which started off as a little nothing, it just has fantastic looking at what people doing all over the world. So yes, I'm exactly on where you are. I find CES to be extraordinarily important because it's not about what the latest toy is. And as you probably know, I'm very much into the latest toy. But it really is where things are going, what the directions are. And it may not be product A or B or C, but the direction is definitely there.
And let's do a little bit more myth busting while we're there, because people see us putting in our travel requests or booking our travel, to go to Las Vegas and be in these hotels, and they think, we bump into each other in the casino playing cards, drinking whatever alcoholic drink it is. This is work. This is
Oh,
insane. You and I bump into each other typically on the press conference lines. The LG press conference takes place at 8 o'clock in the morning.
and we're in there in the line at early at 7 in the morning,
Seven to
and
get
we keep going until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning.
and it's just it's insane. You get so exhausted there. It would be easier to do this show, honestly, if I had a team of 12 people and each one had a different assignment. But then I wouldn't be able to get the perspective. We'd have to meet back together and compare notes, and it still wouldn't be my perspective on things. So it's impossible to see the whole show.
Well,
It's absolutely impossible. You just have to pick what you think are the best places and times to go, and don't waste any time being on buses or taxis between venues. Pick one a day and go to it.
but as you and I both know, I mean, we know the layout pretty well. I mean, now the South Hall isn't there anymore, but we've got the new West. But I almost have a visual map of CES before I even get there, and I know exactly where to look. And I can walk by. Yep, 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 yep. Whoop, that's new. Yep, yep, yep. Oh, that's looking interesting. And of course, we get previews from some people beforehand and gives us hints. But we're also looking at the trends going on in general and saying, are those being reflected in technology? Eureka Park, on the other hand, that's, you have no idea. It's you walk in there and you have no idea what you're going to see.
So let's talk a little bit about the trends since you brought that up, because this is interesting that we haven't been to the show yet. You and I have both received embargoed press information and some other pieces, so we can kind of get what it is. I'm actually a little bit disappointed how much of the noise that's been coming into me is about AR, VR, metaverse, and autonomous driving, because honestly, I find all three of those topics hackneyed, and they've sort of missed their exit. Not that they're not going to be important, but they're not going to be widespread.
Yeah, but let's make sure we understand what you're really saying there. So AR, VR, I've been doing AR, VR since the very, very beginning. I mean, I actually showed General Petraeus the first VR headset he ever saw. And that was, I don't know how many years ago, 10 some years ago, and it was still a thing with wires. So the VR and AR has a lot of applications in corporate spaces and in industry.
Niche applications.
Niche applications. So I don't think it's going away until we start seeing easier to put on headsets, lighter weight, etc. I was one of the original guys with Google Glass. That was an interesting concept, but it was too early for itself. Autonomous cars. So I have a car that is a BMW that has self-driving capabilities, but it's not really self-driving. It's sort of, when you get out on the highway, it will steer, it will brake, it will do all the speed things. But the car is really becoming your new home entertainment system. It's got, I basically do work in there. And I was at Zoomtopia, for example, and Tesla is already showing a Zoom capability right built into the Tesla. So we're going to be seeing more and more assisted driving at a higher level. Not necessarily cars drive all by themselves, but these vehicles are becoming, in fact, computers. There's more computing going on in there than there is mechanics in the old cars. So the car industry is evolving, and I think it's very important. So look at what John Deere showed, I guess 2 years ago, with that amazing tractor that you basically point it at a field and say, go, and the farmer is sitting back drinking a cup of coffee as his tractor is plowing zillions of acres of land. That type of thing is still very, very interesting. And I'm actually looking forward to seeing how that works, because that combines robotics, intelligence, processing. So you look at what's happening with NVIDIA and chips coming in. You look at how that's applied to robotic capability. You look at how that's tied to navigation. All those things coming together to create a whole new category we hadn't seen before. And I think we're going to see the same thing in oceans. We're going to see drone type technology. I've been using drones for a while now. Again, saw the first ones at CES many, many years ago. Actually, not even at CES. It was a preview before CES, and now they're ubiquitous. So we're going to see. I'm not as disappointed that we're not going to see the latest Palm Pilot or whatever it's going to be, which, by the way, was launched at CES. We're not going to be seeing those type of devices, because those have morphed into your phone, into your tablet, into your computer. What you are going to see, those are edge devices that are now being morphed into individual devices. But the car is becoming an edge device by itself. When I go driving now, I drive up to upstate New York. It's a 4-hour drive. I mean, it's my office, and I do everything by voice control. If I take my eyes off the road for a second, I don't have to worry about it, because the car will keep going. It doesn't like it if I take it off for a few more seconds, because there's a camera in the dashboard that looks at me, so it's paying attention to safety. But I don't have to worry about the car in front of me suddenly stopping or anything else, because the car will take care of that. Now, I still have to tell it where to go, but now I can do other things.
No, that makes perfect sense. But let's talk about some of the newer trends, the things that are going to be hot next year. One of the things that's very exciting in terms of it finally catching on, I don't know how much of a disaster the planet needs to be in before people get this, but we are now really looking at, sustainability as
Mhm.
part of environmental social governance as something people are focused on. It's one of the things that I know Polly and HP are very focused on, and we'll probably have some announcements at the show,
Mhm.
in the sustainability range. But, the idea is how do we make the computer just as fast, just as reliable, but using less power? How do
Using less
we
energy. Yep.
how do we build it with more recycled, sustainable parts? How do we make more sustainable printing? How do we ship it in a more sustainable fashion? If we can reduce the box size by some percentage, not only is that less expensive to ship, uses less, recyclable materials, but it's also less expensive to store. And so the sustainability is something that is moving from just a nice to have to
Must
consumers
have.
and
It's a
employees
must have.
are looking at it now saying, I don't want to be involved. I don't want to buy if it's not a focus. I don't want to work for a company if it's not a focus. And it's definitely one of the things that, HP is moving forward on faster than most of our competitors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not familiar with what HP is doing directly, but I can tell you that I'm seeing lots of product now showing up without its usual 17 miles of packaging. There was a time when unboxing was a big deal, sort of like, oh, well, look, open this box and open this and open that. That's being rejected now. It's a waste. There's too much paper, too much cardboard, too much stuff going in the landfill. Now it's really figuring out how to package it and ship it and rebuild it. And the cases are made out of recycled aluminum. But more importantly than what you said about the processing speed and the ability to reduce heat, and et cetera. I can't believe how many computers I have. The big old desktop computers are sitting in the back room, and now I've got little tiny little machines that are basically little tiny devices that are just as powerful, if not more powerful. And then you look at your phone with your capabilities on that. Again, that's all because of processing and reducing the consumption and reducing electrical consumption, is reducing the heat. All of things are good for the environment.
And in 2020, we were joking about, starting to build chips here in the U.S. because we knew how many years it would take to get that going. You know what? It's close now. We've
Yep.
got some manufacturers committing to using chips made here locally in the U.S. And I don't know what the economics of that are. They may be more expensive because labor here is more expensive than in some of the places where they're being built. But you know what? They'll be available. They'll be reliable. I've got a feeling that the chips are just going to be much better and much easier to get going forward.
Well, remember the actual chip manufacturer, no human touches them. It's all robotics and then clean rooms and everything else. So it's more of the assembly that's going to be done overseas. But the actual core components can be done here very effectively, cost effectively, et cetera. It's just a shame that we moved a lot of it overseas and gave us a strategic disadvantage, quite frankly. I think people are beginning to see that. But that's, putting on my US and Patriot hat here. But what I expect to see at CES are the general trends where people are going. What is interesting to people? And I look at my grandkids. I have 2, 5, and 8, and I'm thinking these are the people who are going to be consuming the technology a number of years from now. And I remember when our son was very young, and before he went off to work on his own, he went to his first job, and he came back, and he's at a major investment bank, and I said, Patrick, what was it like, that first day? He said, oh, it was great. He says, but their technology was so backwards, because he was so used to having the technology in our home, which was advanced. And now I'm looking at, getting for a 2-year-old, giving them an iPad or giving them a tablet that they have, because that's what they normally think of. And they would automatically go to it and use it to turn on the lights, to change the channels in the TV. Well, TV channels, that's even a misnomer. To be able to choose the program they want, when they want it, et cetera. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. So fewer gadgets that are physical gadgets, much more applications that are going to use the existing platforms that are out there. So obviously computing is one of them. Phones are another one. But I think we'll also see a lot in terms of the connected sensor devices in the home. So I'm not upstate right now. There's a lot of snow, but I've got cameras, sensors for temperature, water leaks, all the rest. Any problem, literally the home will phone home, as will my car will phone home if there's a problem. So we're starting to see these things that used to be individual products in niches by themselves, combining together and working together in an ecosystem that at the end of the day really gives the consumer a better thing, because the average consumer doesn't know about HD or Zigbee and all the rest. They understand the experience, and that's my thing, is the experience. I'm really looking at the experience of what's that experience going to be like. The experience of how does it this piece of technology or this group of technology devices are going to fulfill my needs and actually solve my problems, as opposed to being flashy, etc.
Let's talk about two other trends before we end here. I mean, I think it's important, to talk about our successes, which we have, but it's also important to talk about some of the losses and some of the failures. 10 years ago, choice peaked. You had 17 different flavors of cola on the shelf. You had 25 different types of telephones. You had all kinds of things. Now that, the economy had taken a little bit of a downturn and we've been through the pandemic before that, choice has sort of disappeared. The market has picked the top one or two or three things in most areas, and the rest of them are sort of falling by the wayside. And that's a little sad. It's a little sad that that choice has gone from, just general consumer use.
So Dave, we should one day, you should do your show out of my home office in the city, where Time Magazine once did the 100 greatest gadgets of all time, and they asked me if I had any of them, and I had 98 of them. And I still have them, and I have, the first XY, the first GPS system, the big old cell phone, the original first computer with dip switches, or toggle switches, the first answering machine, and the list goes on and on and on. So it's actually looking back into history of technology. But yes, we had a lot of choices, but those choices ultimately ended up refining themselves, because product A had this feature, product B had that feature, product C had that feature, and then eventually those three features were put together in a new product E or a new product F, and the other ones fell by the wayside. You look at the history of this stuff, and if you look back, and we've both been looking at it for a long time, you'll see the color of our hair. So we're not just newbies in it. So
I told you to just cut the gray ones, but you didn't listen.
So we both have seen it, and it's a positive move. I mean, I think that the evolution is going in a good way. Yes, we've lost some trends, we've lost some choice, but some of the choices I probably have. Back in the days when the cell phones were innovative, and there's one phone did music, one phone did GPS, and one phone did this, I must have 800, 900 phones in my collection. That's 799 more than I need.
I can only grab a BlackBerry and a Trio while I'm sitting here, so I'll spare you from that.
We got all of those. I mean, look back to Tony Fadell when he was building the iPod and the original phone, and there's a lot of interesting history there, especially when you think back to what he did at Philips beforehand, and the Nino and all the other products that were before those. So yes, there were innovations. They were looking at things, but ultimately they came together into a device that was far more useful, that now my 2-year-old granddaughter can use, as opposed to having a PhD in things.
Okay, that was one. The other one that I think, I used to have a baseball game that I used to be able to play on my computer. This was on a Commodore 64, and they would always yell at us because we were playing the program and not the game. You weren't playing the game, but you were playing the program because you got used to it. Here's a case where the entire technology industry played the program and not the game, where everybody latched onto this concept of metaverse because nobody wanted to get left out of the hype storm. It was 5 years and probably millions of innovations prior to being ready to even be talked about, but everybody didn't want to get shut out. And now there are organization after organization, Meta, Facebook, all the that are letting people go and closing their doors because they latched onto this hype storm trend way earlier than was necessary. So I don't know who's going to dare talk about metaverse at CES this year, but you know what? It's a lot. The noise is a lot lower from my emails and from what I've seen than the prior year.
The noise is a lot lower, but that does not mean that there's still advances going on. So some of the new headsets, for example, I'm working on a project involving architecture, and now what I can put on a headset and I can take a look at a mock-up, I can walk around the building, I can see what it's all about. It's a very useful thing. The same thing is happening in logistics, trying to figure out how to have better movement of people throughout a space. So industry uses of it is very good. I've seen and I saw an interesting AV thing, which using gaming technology and headsets, so that you could actually take the artist rendering of a space, and you could actually see what it'd be like to sit in chair A, B, C, D, or E, anywhere in the space. You can see what the screen would look like. You could hear what the sound sounded like. Those are capabilities that make sense, as opposed to living in a, what was Second Life? I mean, remember that went away a long time ago.
Yeah, and everybody was talking about it like it was back again. It's like, guys, do you remember this?
Yeah, I did not buy any real estate in Second Life, nor did I buy any BTX or FTX, whatever the thing is called, either. So it's interesting to see how that goes. But again, it had a lot of hype, not a lot of reality behind it. And hype doesn't make a product. Hype does not make an industry. John Deere tractor, that's real. I mean, those things are really happening. They really are bringing, agriculture together. Cars that are safer because they have anti-collision devices, those are real things. So that makes sense. Now, is that using some technology that we see in the metaverse? Yeah, of course. I mean, my car has, I don't know how many cameras on it. It uses the cameras to see what's going around it and figures out what to do and not to do in a situation. And if it sees that I'm falling asleep, we'll pull the car over the side of the road. I mean, there are a lot of things that are coming from these technologies, but not necessarily what the hypesters put it out as, and quite frankly, what some of the press wrote about. They didn't understand it, so they elaborated and they said, "Oh, it's Ready Player One. Here we go."
Exactly, and a lot of the stuff looked like Ready Player One. So anyway, so let's do a little fact check here, and let's make sure everybody understands. We're talking about the CES. Used to be called the Consumer Electronics Show, then it was called International CES. Now it's just CES, run by the Consumer Technology Association.
It started in New York originally, and very few people in ballrooms here.
I wasn't there, but I do remember the history. I've walked through the history. So it's January 5th to 8th. In Las Vegas at a number of different venues at what used to be the Sands Expo is now the Phoenician Expo, at the Las Vegas Convention Center, C-Space at the Aria, and a few other locations throughout the city. The show really starts for guys like you and I on the 2nd and the 3rd when we arrive for the press days, and by the time it gets to those last 2 days, I'm already gone. I'm sure you're already gone. And we will.
We get some sleep after the first 3 days, yes.
and preferably not standing in line. And we will report back. Maybe I'll take you up on your offer, and we will do a show from your site, or at least we'll get back together again and talk about what we learned at CES and what we saw. And
I've never been to a CES where I did not come back with something meaningful. And that's not, I cannot say that for the NABs or the Infocoms or the ISEs or the IFAs and all the rest. The CES is not about the products. It's about the trends. And I've never, ever, and I've been doing this for a very long time, ever walked out of CES saying, wow, I just had an epiphany. I just saw something new. I saw a trend happening.
And I bow down to how advanced you are above me in terms of gathering all this data for all these years. But I do have one on over you, and I've been talking to the CTA nonstop about this. They really need to give out little medals for those of us that actually showed up in person last year. There were 40,000 of us there approximately, and 40,000 is small for a CES, but it's a pretty big trade show. 40,000 people. They're predicting 100,000 people this year. I don't know if they're going to get that, considering we're dealing with what's being called the triple demic right now, but as long as you keep your mask on and you don't do anything stupid, everything should be fine. I will definitely see you there. How can somebody get in touch with you to get more information about it?
Sure, it's Greg at HarperVision, HarperVision.com, and HarperVision.com, email HarperVision.com website as well. And absolutely, I'm open to discussion, and especially if someone's got great ideas and innovations and idea, I'm wide open.
Awesome. Greg, thank you for being here. Thank you. Any last words? Anything I cut you off that you were going to say?
Oh, we could talk about this for years, but I think Gary has done a pretty decent job of steering the CES through the pandemic. I remember what happened to Comdex after 9/11. Comdex was the big show in Vegas, and then after 9/11, it just collapsed because they stayed to the same formula of just little tiny companies not looking at trends, etc. And Gary, I think, has done a pretty decent job. His whole team, obviously, of steering it, opening it up to international. What he did in Europe, I think we should be all very thankful that he's managed to steer the ship through troubled waters and make it happen.
And keeping the ability to have a virtual attendee this year for all the people that are
Right.
disabled and homebound. We need to force that issue. I know I've said it on the show till I'm blue in the face, but we need to make sure these shows, now that we've knocked that door open, don't ever let it close again,
and
support.
and they're also saying they're going to keep some of the sessions online afterwards. So because there are a lot of things I won't be able to go to because they're simultaneously with other things. So being able to actually look at this after the show and being able to review the one or two that I heard. So when you tell me, oh, by the way, did you go to this? I go, no, I can go in now and listen to it, or vice versa. So I think that's it's very promising, and so I look forward to that.
So, Greg, I'll see you online at some point on the 3rd, at some ungodly hour in Mandalay Bay's
Probably
Center.
probably LG. I think they're always
Probably LG is the first one. We'll see how many other people join us there. I have RSVP'd, but that doesn't mean anything.
So have I.
So a little housekeeping for our viewers. This is the show that we're doing, obviously, for the 19th. The next 2 weeks are the 26th and the 2nd. We're not going to do a brand new show for those 2 weeks. I'm going to be sharing with you, the IMCCA's holiday card. So we'll have that going for 2 weeks in a row. In case you miss it the first one, catch it the second one, or you can just catch the IMCCA holiday card by looking at it online. And then we will be back right after that, right after CES, with hopefully a wrap-up show of 10, 12 people that were at the show. We get some comments from them and see what they were like, including you, Greg.
Great. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to Vegas again.
So for all of my colleagues at HP and Poly, thank you very much for watching. We really do appreciate you taking some time out of your week to spend it with us. And we'll see you on next week's show. Happy holidays. Enjoy the time off.